Don't mute Mr. Hyde.
I'm on.
There you go. All right. Let's come back from the break, please. Back after a short break. Ms. Zanasi, let's see. You're questioning Mr. Hightower.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. I have before you New Energy Economy Exhibit 7. And do you see, you recognize this, correct?
Mr. Hightower, you need to unmute yourself.
I was unmuted. It keeps switching back and forth between mute and unmute. So
Okay.
I'm
Sorry.
unmuted. That's okay.
You are unmuted. Please start from the beginning.
Okay. What I see is Permian Basin produced water quality drivers for treatment and reuse presentation that I gave at the Produced Water Society meeting in Midland. That's what I can see on my screen.
Yeah, and this is what the cover page of that presentation that's on your website.
Yes.
Okay, and I included on the next page, Ms. Jones, if you would, which here is not the next page of your presentation, but here is page 15. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And you recognize this as page 15 from your presentation from August 2023?
Correct. I think that's, yes, I remember this.
And the third bullet, the third big bullet, says that you're working with Lee County on a produced water authority. Is that right?
That is correct.
Madam Hearing Examiner, I would like to move the admission of New Energy Economy Exhibit 7.
Are there objections? Oh, it's admitted.
Thank you. I'd like to move on now to discuss with you where the consortium's funding comes from.
All righty.
So Exxon is one of the largest oil companies in the world and is the largest operator in the Permian Basin. Is that right?
I don't know if they're the largest operator in the Permian Basin, but they are one of the largest oil companies in the world. I think I can agree to that. I don't know who's the best in or the biggest in Permian Basin, but they are big.
Are you aware that they are 11% of Permian production?
No, I'm not.
Are you aware that Exxon announced its aims to increase production in the Permian to about 3.8 million barrels of oil per day in 2024?
Objection. I don't know the relevance of this. I have an objection, Madam Hearing Examiner. I don't know the relevance of Exxon's operations to the issue before the Commission on the Rules.
Right. Ms. Nanasi?
It's actually just the last foundational question, just to give context about what I'm about to ask next.
Which relates to water reuse.
Which relates to consortium funding.
Okay, go ahead.
Excuse me, let me renew my objection. I'm not sure how consortium funding has anything to do with the rules being considered by the panel.
Ms. Nanasi, where are you going?
I think consortium funding by the oil and gas industry is enormously relevant to motive and bias, etc.
Okay, she's allowed to explore that with a witness, Ms. Taylor. Go ahead.
So would you mind just answering if you know that Exxon announced that it will increase its production to about 3.8 million barrels a day in 2024?
I did not know that.
Okay. Exxon was one of the 4 initial sponsors of the New Mexico Produced Water Consortium. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And in 2019, did they give $416,700?
No.
When Over what period of time did they give 416?
As far as I know, they gave $250,000 over a 3-year period, $83,333 a year from 2020, 2021, and 2022.
And how much did Exxon give to the consortium in 2023?
In cash, nothing.
What else did they give?
As far as I know, we did not get any funding from ExxonMobil in 2023. Now,
And how,
if they sent money through NMSU, that could have happened, but I don't know that we got any money for the consortium in 2023.
are you aware of any money that Exxon gave NMSU since 2019?
The only numbers that I know is the $250,000 that I'm aware of for that 3-year period.
And how about in 2024?
I don't know that any money that ExxonMobil has given to the consortium or NMSU in 2024.
Let's move on to Chevron. They were also one of the 4 founding sponsors of the New Mexico Produced Water Research Consortium. Is that right?
That is correct.
And how much money has Chevron given on a yearly basis since 2019?
From 2020, 2021, 2022, I think Chevron averaged about $100,000 a year for a total over the course of the last through 2023 was $300,000.
And what about this year?
We have no funding from Chevron this year to date.
Jennifer Bradfute works as an attorney with Marathon Oil and helped write the Produced Water Act. Is that correct?
Your Honor, I mean, I've tried to be patient. I fail to see how any of this has anything to do with bias for Mr. Hightower. We're just going through donations from various oil companies to the consortium, which I think you've tried to make very clear. Mr. Hightower is not here on behalf of the consortium. And now we're talking about a private attorney and drafting the Produced Water Act. I mean, I'm lost.
Okay. I thought I understood what you were doing with the oil companies, Ms. Anasi, but where are you going with Ms. Bradfute?
Well, I think that the Produced Water Act is extraordinarily relevant to this whole proceeding and has been brought up a lot. I think it's important to know who wrote the Produced Water Act, and that then I will ask, and how much money does Marathon Oil give to the consortium?
Mr. Wexler?
Last time I checked, the New Mexico legislature actually was responsible for the Produced Water Act. There's no any individual.
Yeah, I think it's now become too attenuated, Ms. Nanasi.
Thank you. Does Marathon Oil contribute to the consortium?
No, they have not.
And how about NGL Energy Partners? Have they given approximately $300,000 or more since 2019?
I mean, Your Honor, same objections. I don't see how this is different.
Okay. Is this the end of it, Ms. Nanasi?
There are a couple of other oil companies that I wanted to ask about.
Okay. Let's do this for just a few more minutes, and then I'd like you to move on.
Thank you.
And NGL donated $500,000 over 3 years. Matter of fact, that was done at the opening announcement by Secretary Kinney of the start of the consortium in October of 2019. So yes, NGL donated $500,000 over a 3-year period for 2021 and 2022.
And have they renewed any funding since 2022?
Not to my knowledge, no.
What about ConocoPhillips?
ConocoPhillips has not donated to the consortium based upon my understanding.
Has ConocoPhillips donated to NMSU?
I do not know. I do not know what their arrangement with NMSU is. We have in our account, we've not received any funding from ConocoPhillips for the consortium's activities.
What about Hillcore Energy Company?
Hillcorp Energy Company has participated in the consortium, but has not provided any funding to the consortium's operations.
And has Hillcore funded or contributed to NMSU?
I do not know that.
Ms. Donati, I don't think you've laid the foundation to ask the questions about donations to NMSU. It doesn't sound like he's in a position to answer that. Do you have other consortium?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you tell me about Select Water Solutions? Has the consortium received any funding from Select Water Solutions?
Not that I know of, not that have come to the consortium that I'm aware of. But I do know Select Water Solutions. They are a large midstream in the Permian Basin. And they do sit on the consortium as a member of the consortium's committees. They are a member of the consortium. They paid their membership dues.
What other oil and gas companies have given sums to the consortium over $100,000?
None that I know of.
Has the consortium received any funds in 2023 from any source?
So we have supported the consortium's activities with research proposals with DOE, and so we've gotten funding from research proposals from DOE, probably to the tune of over $1 million over the last 3 years for research that relates directly to produced water reuse activities. I'm trying to think of, we have had donations from the Groundwater Protection Council to start our data portal. That was from their funds to support us in getting our produced water data portal initiated. But that's kind of the summary of the other funding sources that we have, other than my funds to cover my travel and to do my work from me, and then the donations from Paige on her time to support the consortium also.
So is it your testimony that since 2022, you have received no funding over $100,000 from any oil and gas companies?
That is correct. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure that is absolutely correct.
In 2023, did the legislature give the consortium any money?
No. Just a second. No, I do not think that the consortium got any money from the state legislature in 2023. Then 2024, there was a bill passed to provide $1.2 million, I think, to the consortium for activities for the consortium. 2023, there may have been some money in a bill that went to Water Resources Research Institute that was split with some of that money going to the consortium to do some modeling on water availability. But anyway, that's all that I know that's ever come through the state legislature.
Would you say that you regularly communicate with your contacts from ExxonMobil, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips and NGL?
Those representatives from those companies are on several of our working groups. So I can interact with them on at least a monthly basis for their representatives on the consortium. I also meet them When I give presentations at technical meetings, there will be people from ExxonMobil and other companies there, as well as vendors. So I don't have regular meetings with any particular oil company, but there are oil company representatives on our working groups that I talk to regularly as part of the business and activities of the consortium.
Ms. Jones, might I ask you if you could please bring up in the exhibit 12, high tower email of 1/10/23. No, that's Justin Noble 12. There's one that's called NEE Exhibit 12. And then it says high tower email of 1/10/23. It's okay. No, it's not in documented matters. It is in the Dropbox though. I did print them out because when I was the other day when he was here, but I would have showed him too. I'm sorry about this.
Is it possible to read it to him and ask him to confirm what what what's important about it?
I can try, but I don't know how he's going to authenticate it. But I don't know how we can show it to him. But this is an email that says Mike Hightower from you, Mike Hightower at the email is mmhightower@q.com. It was sent on Tuesday, January 10th, 2023, and it's to a number of people, and some of them are R.M. McCurdy at selectenergy.com, Ryan Hall at nglep.com, somebody at chevron.com, Fred Berner, maybe, Louis Salazar at ConocoPhillips, and Jim Griswold at MNerd. And the title is Discussion of NPDES Research Permits for Treated Produced Water. I could show it to you, Madam Hearing Officer.
All of those people are members of the working groups within the consortium. So that's a directed letter. Those are the right names on the letter. So you can keep going. It sounds like it's a real letter from me or email from me. Go ahead.
Okay, and then it says, guys, you might have picked up that I'm trying to push the envelope this year to move toward implementation. I informed everyone of that in the end of year meeting. Does that sound like what you were?
Yeah. Yes, I know exactly what this is about. This is about using treated produced water inside OCD, inside the oil and gas, so that we could collect additional water data for NMED. So yeah, I know that email, absolutely. So the way to accelerate getting more information is getting more treatment systems out and operating. And so what I was trying to encourage was for us to work with OCD to get systems out and operating to support their efforts on plugging and abandoning abandoned wells where they need both fresh water and high concentrated brine to plug those wells. And so if we could get some technologies out at these sites that are operated by these oil companies or midstreams, that would allow us to, over the course of 6 or 7 months, if we had 2 or 3 of these technologies operating, to collect data on treatment, verification of treatment technologies through OCD. So, yep, that's the memo.
Did you say we are at a point where we feel we need to move to actual discharge testing at a small research scale, 1.5 to 2 acres for 6 to 12 months to help us access fate and transport and validate associated modeling efforts?
Yes, if you put it in context, if we could collect data through OCD, then we would have information to allow us to go to NMED and possibly set up some larger scale demonstrations. Correct. Or yeah, exactly. Okay.
So, Madam Hearing Examiner, oh, here it is, finally. Thank you, Ms. Jones. I would move now that you see on the screen before you, New Energy Economy Exhibit 12, is this the email that we've been talking about?
I think it is. Yeah, I can't hardly see it, but yes. Okay.
I'd move the admission of New Energy Economy Exhibit 12.
Any objections? It's admitted.
Okay. Could I read one last sentence there?
No, thank you.
Okay. I don't think you would want to hear it because it says exactly what we're trying to do there, but that's okay.
Thank you.
It's in the record of what I was trying to do. That's fine.
Okay. As the head of the consortium, you've been privy to scientific material regarding produced water from Pennsylvania, California, and Colorado, correct?
Correct.
On page 2 of your testimony, the 4th paragraph, you state, the data available on produced water overwhelmingly shows that it can be treated and used safely. Pennsylvania, California, and Colorado have used treated produced water for surface water discharge and land applications for many years. Is that right?
Correct.
Have you read the parties' testimonies and exhibits in this case?
When you say parties, I mean from you?
Sure.
I have not seen your testimony, no.
Okay. You know that in Pennsylvania, it was legal to spread oil and gas waste or produced water on roads for de-icing or dust suppression, correct?
Yes, it was also allowed in New Mexico at one time.
But after 13 scientists co-authored a scientific research study to determine the potential environmental and human health impacts of using produced water on roads for de-icing or dust suppression, they found that spreading oil and gas wastewaters show that these waters have salt, radioactivity, and organic contaminant concentrations, often many times above drinking water standards. Is that right?
I have also shown that raw produced water has those concentrations many times above drinking water. But the water that was used for those applications was not treated. The water that I was talking about from Pennsylvania is water that has been treated and is being discharged in based upon the treatment technology that they use. Your examples are not treated produced water; they're raw produced water from, as far as I know, based upon my studies of the cases in Pennsylvania.
I think that you're correct. And after,
Ms. Nanasi, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but we have a commissioner with his hand up.
oh, I'm
And
sorry, I didn't
I
see
want to
that.
make sure that I am responsive here. Commissioner Brankard?
I was just commenting on that last exhibit. It was actually 2 emails,
Yes,
not 1.
yes,
Okay, and they were sent to 2 separate parties, groups of parties.
yes. That's
Um,
on the face of the exhibit.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everybody understood, even though he was only talking about 1 email, that the quote was actually from the second email
That's right.
to,
So the
to the
first,
EPA.
that's right. The first quote she asked him about was in the first email, which went to the oil companies and EMNRD. The second email went to 3 people at EPA. And the second time she quoted something from the email, she was quoting from the EPA email. Yes.
Okay, as long as that's clear. Thank you.
Well,
All right. Thank you.
it
Thank you.
wasn't clear to
Um,
me that that's what she was quoting from the second email. I don't remember the question about my email to the E EPA.
Okay. There was the second quote was about the small research scale, 1/2 to 2 acres. That quote was from the second email to EPA.
Okay, I didn't know I don't remember that particular email to the EPA.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Zanasi.
I think that you were correct about what you were saying about Pennsylvania, that that it was using produced water that had been untreated. And after that scientific report came out, um, Pennsylvania banned the use of spreading produced water and using it for de-icing or road maintenance. Is that your understanding?
I do not know when they did that, but New Mexico did the same thing. They kind of outlawed it also in New Mexico maybe 20 years ago
And
for
there are,
road construction.
you understand that 4 states have banned the use of produced water for de-icing and dust control, correct?
I think the point is that it should be raw produced water for those applications. And as I said before, I agree that raw produced water is inappropriate for discharge in my testimony.
Is it your testimony that produced water from fracking wells are used in California?
No, it is not. I haven't said anything about wells in California or fracking wells in California.
Well, you did say on your um you did say that produced water has been used for years. Produced treated water, I believe. Let me just get to
Correct. I can tell you what I know is, and we have
in
this
California. And I
in
just wanted to
California.
clarify.
Treated produced water is used in California for agriculture. It has been for 25 years, but that water that is used in California is from conventional wells. I think that's maybe where you're going.
That is where I'm going.
That's
So
yeah, it is for conventional wells. Uh, that's absolutely correct. It's from conventional wells in the Bakersfield area.
and you've already testified that there's quite a difference between the produced water that is produced from conventional wells as opposed to fracking wells, correct?
I don't know that I've said that, but I think in general, the understanding is that unconventional wells are generally higher in TDS levels than conventional wells. But in both cases, the water in California is treated to a water quality from the conventional wells. So the water that's used in Pennsylvania is treated. The water that's used in California is also treated. And they're treated to a quality identified by the state environment departments.
Do you understand that for any produced water that is potentially going to be reused in California, the oil and gas industry must disclose under penalties of perjury all chemical additives that are used in the entire oil and gas conventional well process?
I did not know that directly.
Do you know that the regulatory agency in California has adopted specific produced water technical standards that have been adopted for salinity limits, chloride, boron?
Yes, I do know that.
Ms. Jones, could you please pull up exhibit NG20? And it says analysis of regulatory framework for produced water. This was discussed yesterday. It's in New Energy Economy Exhibit 4, the rebuttal technical testimony of Norman Gom, and it's NG20. Okay, I think that looks right. And would you please, if you could, go to page 15 of 33 of that. You're familiar with this analysis by Dr. Shu, are you not?
With Dr. Shu has done lots of analysis. Can you tell me maybe which kind of analysis you're talking about, or is it a specific one, or analysis in general?
Did you just see it on the
I haven't. No,
No?
I did not see it.
Okay, it's called I got it from your website. It's called Analysis of Regulatory Framework for Produced Water Management and Reuse in Major Oil and Gas Producing Regions in the United States.
Okay, it looks like a paper that she's done. Yeah.
It's
Can
15.
you tell me? Can we go back to the first, the title?
I'm sorry, just you
Okay.
want to know the abstract?
No, I just wanted to see the title, the date, just so that I can refresh my memory real quickly.
It's July 2022, and that's what it's called: Analysis of Regulatory Framework for Produced Water Management and Reuse in Major Oil and Gas Producing Regions of the United States. It's by Wen Bin, Wenbin,
Okay.
and then the first
And
name.
which, yeah,
It's in
and
water.
which, the journal Water, okay, yes. Now,
Okay.
this is the one that's in 2022?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Dr. Shu is the associate director of the consortium, right?
Mhm.
Could you give a yes or no answer, please,
Yes,
sir?
oh, yeah, oh, excuse me, yes,
And she's also the lead researcher for the consortium.
correct.
And you're not a scientist or a researcher, are you?
Yes, I am. I'm an engineer, but I am a researcher, yes.
As the Okay, and so if I'm going to read that highlighted portion, just
The
do
yellow
you see
portion
that
that I
highlighted portion?
can't read? Oh, okay,
Yeah, I'm going to read that for you.
okay, all right.
15 of 33. So what it says in Dr. Shu's research is the use of treated produced water for agriculture is under investigation in Colorado. However, some research found adverse effects of treated produced water for the soil and plants. These results suggest that more treatments and toxicity studies are required for produced water before it can be used for irrigation. Some advanced treatment methods, such as membrane-based techniques, are required. For New Mexico, approximately 10% of produced water was reused inside the oil and gas field, and currently there is no produced water reused outside of the oil and gas field.
Okay.
Can you see that now that it's blown up?
No, it's not blown up, but it sounds like you read it, and if you read it correctly, I'm okay with that. Go ahead.
And so, so the current research that we know about from Colorado regarding treated produced water says that at least some of that's been used on soil and plants have had adverse effects. Is that right?
Yes, I can talk about some of that research, but that's true.
You are aware that in Colorado, it has a unique water rights system with a water court. Is that right?
Correct.
In Colorado, the legislature allows local government control to enact and manage more restrictive, necessary, and reasonable regulations above and beyond the Water Quality Control Commission there. Is that also true?
I don't know. I don't know all of Colorado's law on water and water rights, nor their environmental. I don't know.
But this is why Dr. Shu did this scientific peer-reviewed study to analyze the different regulatory frameworks for produced water management, correct?
Yes, yes.
Is it true that in December 2023, Texas told New Mexico that it would no longer accept its fracking waste for injection disposal?
I do not think they did that. I think they minimized the amount of fracking waste, but I don't think they excluded it.
So they just reduced the amount that they would that Texas would take from New Mexico?
That's my understanding. I'm not an expert on Texas produced water regulations, but I think they did reduce the amount that could be injected along the state line.
Is it your understanding that New Mexico is on the brink of running out of injection capacity for disposal?
I think that New Mexico has the information that I have from the OCD was in 2018 when they mentioned that they thought the disposal capacity in the general part of the Permian Basin would run out within 10 years. That was in 2018. So we're halfway there. I would say, based upon the geologist from OCD, that means that we're in the Permian Basin, that there's becoming more and more limited access to disposal opportunities. And with some of the seismic response areas that we have in the state, that there would have to be new areas to be opened up for disposal if we continue for more than additional 5 years or so. So I think that the disposal capacity, based upon what I have heard and seen, is becoming more and more limited in New Mexico. Current disposal capacity is becoming more and more limited. Yes.
In 2022, is it correct that there were 2,400 quakes or seismic activities in New Mexico?
I do not know the number. I know that the number has increased and they're getting a lot of seismic earthquakes. That's all I know. I do not know the magnitude of the number. I do know that the magnitudes are beginning to increase, but that's all I know from an actual numerical perspective.
Are you aware of treated or untreated produced water discharge or reuse taking place outside of the regulatory authority of OCD and NMED?
I do not know of anybody that is discharging produced water, raw produced water, or treated produced water outside of NMED. I do not know of any instances of that at all. Not in New Mexico. I don't know about it in Texas for sure, but as far as I know in New Mexico, I do not know of any of those discharges.
Did you know that Marvin Nash and Encore Green set up treatment equipment to treat produced water and provide it to a cotton farmer?
I do know that, yes. It was in Mid-Kiff, Texas, yes.
Was the discharge in New Mexico or Texas?
As far as I know, there was no discharge. That project was operated in Mid-Kiff, Texas, which is south of Midland, and I do not know whether they discharged any water at all. As far as I understand, they treated the water, recombined it, and re-injected it in a saltwater disposal well.
Ms. Jones, would you please bring up New Energy Economy Exhibit 17, which is the July 5th, 2022 NMED no discharge memo to consortium? Mr. Hightower, are you familiar with the July 5th, 2022 NMED no discharge memo to the consortium?
Yes, I am.
And this was a memo to you from John Roderick from NMED and was CC'd to the Deputy Cabinet Secretary, Rebecca Roos, was also CC'd to Dr. Dan Arvizu, who's the Chancellor of MSU, Dr. Peju, and the Government Advisory Board of the consortium. You know what memo I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
And do you know that it said that NMED told you in particular, and this is in bold, consistent with current state law, off-field discharges of produced water or treated produced water associated with consortium pilot projects or other non-consortium pilot projects are not allowed. Do you remember that?
Sure, that had been we got our first, we discussed that in 2020, in January 2020, and that was the operational approach for the consortium since we began in January 1st, 2020. So this memo reiterates what we were already doing.
Madam Hearing-Zemmer, I'd like to move New Energy Economy Exhibit 17 into the record.
Objections? It's admitted.
Mr. Hightower, you have been admonished by NMED and OCD that you must follow the protocols and that operators wishing to engage in pilot projects were to provide documentation directly to the regulators, correct?
I don't think so. I have not been admonished by anyone. So I guess where do you think that I was admonished?
Madam Hearing Examiner, Ms. Jones, could we please bring up New Energy Economy Exhibit 16? 16. This is an email to you from Adrian Sandoval on October 27th, 2022, following that other NMED no discharge memo. And let me see if you recall this. This is an email to you, and it says, Mike, Leigh, forwarded on your email below. It is becoming increasingly clear that we need to have a reset of expectations with the Produced Water Consortium. We are now frequently hearing about these pilot projects. Unfortunately, the information about what is being proposed and what approvals are required is often erroneous. This creates confusion with the public and ultimately sets back the work of the consortium. For example, OCD and NMED met with Hillcore several months ago and provided explicit instruction that the details of the pilot project should be provided to both departments by the operator. To date, neither OCD nor NMED received a project proposal for review. We were very clear that the operator, Hillcore in this case, needed to initiate the process and provide that documentation, not the consortium. The consortium is not the operator, nor is it the regulator. The consortium can work to identify and support promising pilot projects. However, prior to, and in capitals, it says any of those proceeding, they are subject to the applicable approval and review process. Additionally, NMED and OCD have been working extensively together on produced water projects to ensure that we are coordinated and that the appropriate regulations are followed. The statement that NMED has asked you to review the projects with us is incorrect. It is the expectation of OCD that the of the project reach out to the departments, excuse me, to initiate any project reviews. This is the path for all permitting with the division and is no different for a produced water project. Please communicate with the consortium members that if there are any proposed pilot projects, they need to be submitted to both OCD and NMED for review permitting prior to any equipment being placed on site or pilot beginning. Failing to do this creates mistrust among the public and ultimately hampers the consortium's achievements of its goals. Thanks, Adrian Sandoval. Do you remember receiving that email, which was actually then resent to you by John Roderick?
Yes, I got that email.
Madam Hearing Examiner, I move the admission of New Energy Economy Exhibit 16 into the record.
Objections?
Yeah, I'm going to object to this. I mean, we're getting pretty far afield, so I'm going to object on relevance grounds. Apparently, we're applying the rules of evidence, so I'm going to object on hearsay grounds because there's no exception. There's also foundation issues. We have a string here. There's multiple emails, some of which don't even involve Mr. Hightower. I just don't see how this could come in a court of law or here.
But I could
Okay.
answer, I mean, I can answer this email. I will tell you.
Okay,
that-
hold on, Mr.
right.
Hightower. The objection is overruled. NEE Exhibit 16 is admitted. Ms. Nanasi, would you like to have a response from Mr. Hightower?
No, thank you.
You did ask me if I had been exonerated. I will tell you that,
Hold on, Mr. Hightower.
ma'am,
I'm going to invite your response to any questioning you've been through after all of that is done. All right, so just
okay.
park that for the moment.
Remind me to come back to this, and if you would, I'd be happy to do that one.
Okay, Ms. Nanasi, do you have other questions?
Thank you. Now, Mr. Wexler, representing NMOGA, asked you about NMOGA exhibit. I believe it's 139. And I also sent that to you, Ms. Jones. This will be the last area, I think, of my questioning, but I would like to look at my notes before. You said earlier when Mr. Wexler was questioning you that you were aware of this newest peer-reviewed scientific report that appears in the Journal of Hazardous Materials, and Dr. Chu was among, and you said Mr. Hamali was also one of the scientists, and this was just got published in April of 2024, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Jones, do you have that? It was the last.
It was passed out to a lot of us from the.
Okay, but I was hoping that maybe you could please pull it up on the screen just because I did
He's trying.
have, okay, great. Highlight it.
It's up. Go ahead, Ms. Nanasi.
So I'm going to just read a couple of the highlights from NMOGA Exhibit 139. And the first one is on the first page. It's the second sentence, and it says, rigorous water quality assessment is critical in evaluating produced water treatment because produced water consists of numerous contaminants beyond the targets listed in general discharge and reuse standards. Is that your understanding?
Yes, ma'am, we have said that multiple times, that the non-target analysis that we have done is intended to find if there are any other constituents that you would not find in a normal application. So this is very consistent with the approach that we have coordinated with NMED. And that just says that that's what we're doing. We're
And
going
so,
beyond, okay.
and so that means that there's a lot of variability in from one produced water sample to the next. Isn't that right?
This says that there's some variability. What we're finding is the variability is not as much as you might think, but there is variability. That's true.
If you could please, Ms. Jones, go to what is the third page of this. One more. I think it is the one, but it's up at the top on the left. Yeah, right there. And it says, however, if the end goal of oil and gas produced water treatment is beneficial reuse, more emphasis should be given to detailed water quality of the permeate when evaluating treatment technologies due to the numerous inorganic and organic contaminants potentially in produced water that could present human and ecological health risks. Did I read that correctly?
I don't know, it's not showing up, but I agree with that statement. The permeate does have a carryover for some cases, and that permeate has to be polished with additional treatment technologies to make it available for reuse. We agree with that. That's part of the post-treatment and polishing steps that I have mentioned numerous times during these proceedings.
Thank you. Could you please go to page 6? And on the bottom there, it says certain compounds that were not detected in feed water were later detected in treated effluents. Do you see that?
No, I do not, but I believe that that's possible. So
Okay.
I
So
don't disagree with that.
and
And there's a reason for that, but I'll go into that maybe if you want, but we don't have to.
do scientists know why do scientists know definitively why compounds were not initially detected, but then were detected after treatment?
Sure, there's two major reasons. One is that the concentrations in some of the raw waters can be so high that they hide the very low concentrations of really trace minerals or trace organics. And so when you do treatment and you take those, you reduce those major chemicals by a factor of 100 to 500 times, those additional low concentrations may show up. And that's why you do the non-targeted analysis with some very sophisticated equipment, the high resolution LCMS. The second thing that can occur and this is generally in the thermal technologies, is that if you haven't taken out all of your organics prior to doing your treatment, and take most of those organics out during pre-treatment, you can, with the high temperatures, get steam reforming of those oils and greases that could create additional byproducts. And they may not be very high concentrations, but you need to look for those if you're potentially steam reforming with a thermal process, an organic. So that's one of the reasons that pre-treatment for produced water to us is very important, that you can get those organics down as low as you can before you try to do the desal system. So you don't do that transformation of some of those organics into other types of chemicals. But that's one of the reasons that you want to do very high level testing and evaluation of your permeate that you get out of a desalination process.
And is the second reason encompassed in this sentence that appears on page 7, which says, this suggests that they could be transformation products resulting from photochemical reactions?
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then on page 8, there's a table there, and it says there's a list of new organic suspects detected only in distillate samples. Is that right?
I can't see it. And this paper just came out, so I haven't really had a chance to look at it all that closely. But I believe it. I believe we can get some byproducts that come out of the treatment process. So, but I can't see it on my screen, so I'll go along with it.
Okay. And if we could just go to page 11, and I believe that this is the last part. It says on page 11, additionally, the majority of the compounds initially undetected in feed water and later observed in distillate samples exhibited levels of toxicity ranging from very high to high in one or more toxicity categories, mostly developmental toxicity and acute ecotoxicity, while 3 compounds. I'm going to skip over all those compounds because the commissioners have the names, and I will be happy to give it to the court reporter afterward. Were associated with medium to unknown toxicity levels in all considered toxicity categories. Therefore, utilizing these treated produced water samples for different reuse activities outside oil and gas fields that have high possibilities for direct or indirect human and environmental contact remains questionable, because the majority of the shortlisted suspects are associated with some form of human health, ecotoxicity, or environmental faith-based concerns. However, qualitative findings obtained from this non-targeted suspect screening, coupled with toxicity prediction tools alone, are insufficient to fully characterize potential risks during the reuse of treated produced water. It ends with a paragraph under outlook, and it says, propositions are rising to consider produced water as an alternative source of water for diverse reuse applications in arid regions, provided that treated produced water is of sufficient quality for the specific reuse scenario. In the meantime, significant opposition also exists due to the complex nature and unknown composition of the produced water matrix. High salinity together with complex composition makes it challenging to perform targeted chemical analyses using standard methods, necessitating modifications of standard methods or new methods exclusively for the produced water matrix. In addition, identifying unknowns using solely targeted techniques is nearly impossible due to the complex composition of produced water, the lack of appropriate internal standards, and unreasonably high analytical costs for the multitude of potential constituents. Most of the existing literature on produced water treatment technology evaluations is based on limited target analyte removals and therefore does not demonstrate human health and ecological safety in long-term reuse applications. Do you agree with this study that Dr. Shu and Himali wrote in the Journal of Hazardous Materials?
Yes. So what it is saying is that.
Could you just answer it first before you
Sure.
explain? Thank you.
I think that they've hit on the reason why we're doing non-targeted analysis and why we're doing treatment polishing, and why
So you do agree?
have to do. Yeah, you have to. You have to do additional wet testing and other toxicity testing to get to a level that you can reuse this. That is correct. That's what that section implies, is that post-treatment testing and wet testing, toxicity testing is necessary as a final effort when you're looking at produced waters, which is what we're doing.
I think I'm finished. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Hightower.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anasi. Ms. Fox?
Just a second, don't I get a second? You wanted me to address issues that I
right.
might have with questions?
After Ms. Fox and Mr. Knight, but I will remind you.
Oh, I have to wait that long? Let me make a
Yes.
note. Okay, all righty. I'll make a note of this, though.
Sir.
Yes, ma'am.
No, not you. I'm talking to Mr. Davis.
I just have a question about what time.
At the moment, it's 5:30. We may or may not be able to get a little grace on that. We will never be able to stay past 6.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Fox.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. Did you say that we go till 6? I didn't quite hear that.
I did not say that.
Oh. Hello, Mr. Hightower. Thank you for your testimony. Is there a list of consortium members on the consortium website? You're muted, Mr. Hightower.
So I don't know how I got unmuted. I'm sorry. Or how I got muted.
We can hear you.
You hear me now?
Yes.
So our list of members changes annually, depending upon who signs up for the membership each year. We have
Mr. Hightower?
Yes.
Mr. Hightower, the question is there a list of consortium members on the consortium website today?
There should
Yes.
There should be, yes. We've had it before, and we should have a new list for 2024 that it should have gone up in the last couple of weeks.
Mr. Hightower, can you direct us to where that is on the website?
It should be under consortium efforts, and I don't know exactly which tab it is. We just slightly modified this, but it should be called internal communications or internal efforts on the website. Pull down tab.
Could it be under About Us?
Could be, yes.
What pull down tab? Mr.
Yeah.
Um,
I haven't been there in the last month, as they've changed it, so I don't know exactly where to find it. But anyway,
do you believe that there's a list? Are you 100% certain that there is a list of the consortium membership on the website? Because I can't find it anywhere.
that's one of the issues with our website. It's kind of tough to find stuff, and that's why we're reworking it. I can't tell you for sure that we have an up-to-date membership list on the website since we just changed it in the last month. I just don't know. I have not looked at the consortium website in the last month.
For transparency, you'd agree then that the course consortium should have a list of its members on the website, correct?
I don't disagree with that. No.
How many members approximately are there in the consortium?
Generally, we've had somewhere around 50 different organizations. Those are NGOs and companies, vendors. Then we have another 10 or 15 organizations that are state or federal organizations, New Mexico Department of Agriculture, NMED, EPA, et cetera. But those
Thank you,
are
Mr. Hightower.
okay.
On your website, the leadership team is identified as you as program director and Dr. Shu as associate director, correct?
Correct.
And that is the entirety of the leadership team, correct?
Yes.
Doctors Zhang and Young are not part of the leadership or management team of the consortium, correct?
No, they're just the head researchers for NMSU for the consortium.
You
Dr. Zhang
have
does.
said a couple of times there are about 35 peer-reviewed articles on the consortium website, correct?
The number is, I don't know exactly the number, but it's in the range of 30. 3 years ago, it was 22, and we've added several in the last couple of years. So it should be on the range of in the 30 range. Yes,
Are
that's what I have said.
those publications listed under the resources tab and then the publications tab?
They should be.
Could you quickly go to that tab? I count 22 publications, not 35, and I just want
I
it to be
can't
clear
with my
clear
computer.
for the record.
Yeah, with my
Don't
computer.
talk over one another, please.
Okay. I can't go to my computer currently with this system that I've got right here, so I can't look at it right now.
You can't verify that there are 22 publications cited on the website.
I know that there were 22 a year, 2 years ago. I don't know how many we've added since then.
Now, just to be clear, those articles are not credited to the consortium per se, correct? They are credited to specific authors.
That is correct.
And many, but not all, of the principal authors are from New Mexico State University, correct?
That is correct.
And many of the co-authors are not from New Mexico State University, but from other educational institutions and other institutions, correct?
Some of them are other institutions. Some, yes.
Now, in your testimony on page 2, you cite to 3 studies as examples of data that you claim, quote, overwhelmingly, end quote, show that produced water can be used safely, correct?
Correct.
Those studies are from Lee County Soil and Water Conservation District and others, a pilot project by ConocoPhillips and others, and a 2006 pilot project from Yates and Devon, correct?
Those are the three that I mentioned in New Mexico. The ones that.
Yes, thank you.
those-
Did
okay.
you attach those studies to your testimony?
No, I did not.
Those studies are not published in a scientific journal after peer review, have they been?
No, they were not.
Now, on Wednesday, you discussed when you testified a variety of other studies undertaken by consortium or consortium affiliated researchers, correct?
I don't know which one you're relating to, so just go ahead and mention them and then I'll tell you. Okay.
Mr. Hightower, I'm sorry to interrupt, Ms. Fox. Mr. Hightower, a few people are having trouble hearing you. Would you stay close to your microphone?
Okay, I'm standing here trying to be close. Maybe I'm getting my hands in the way. So I'll talk a little louder. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. So, Mr. Hightower, the question was, during that testimony on Wednesday, you discussed a number of studies conducted by the consortium or consortium affiliated persons, correct?
And I'm trying to think what the question was as far as on my testimony on Wednesday. Are they talking about the tests that we have run and operated? Or,
Mr. Hightower, I'm talking about your testimony from Wednesday, if you recall that.
well, you're saying that I
And
said something, but I'm trying to figure out what context I said it. I'm just trying to remember what context we were talking about then. Do you remember?
On Wednesday, I do remember, on Wednesday,
Mm-hmm.
you discussed a number of studies that were conducted by the consortium or consortium affiliated persons, correct?
Right, we talked about a list of projects that we had conducted. Yes, I did talk about that. Yes.
One example is a study that you discussed that you say identified approximately 400 constituents in produced water in the Permian Basin. Is that correct?
So you're talking about projects looking at treatment and projects looking at water quality. So the study that was done by Dr. Shu of 46 wells in the Permian
No,
Basin.
Mr. Hightower,
Yes.
the question is, you talked actually at some length on Wednesday about a study that was done that identified approximately 400 constituents in produced water found in the Permian Basin. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes, I do, but that's not what I said. Can I tell you what I said?
Yes.
What I said is, in the study that was done for the Permian Basin, we did an analysis and we're looking for up to 400 constituents that we tested for in the Permian Basin waters. That was part of the analysis that was done. So what I said that we found, and it's was presented in my Exhibit 1, was we found in general 100 constituents in the produced water in the Permian Basin, plus or minus 20 constituents in each well. So when you look at that, in general, we found 100 to 120 constituents in the produced waters in the Permian Basin. We looked for 400. We found 100 and 120 more or less. So that's what I testified to. I did not testify that we found 400. Testified that we generally saw in each well around 100 plus or minus. All right, that's what I said.
Thank you. You didn't attach that study to your notice of intent, correct?
Notice of intent, I did not, I did my exhibit, I think has that reference. That reference is one of the references that we've already talked about today that has that summary data in it by Jen et al. In 2022.
In your notice of intent, you cited to only one peer review article, correct? That's the Zhang 2022 article entitled Characterization of Produced Water and Surrounding Surface Water in the Permian Basin, the United States. Correct?
In my exhibit or my original?
In the notice of intent, which included your 3 pages of testimony in Exhibit 1.
I think that was the main one that I referenced, yes.
That's the only one that you referenced, correct?
No, I've referenced several others in my exhibit, but that was the one on water quality of the Permian Basin that I did reference.
What other peer review articles did you identify in your notice of intent?
Okay, so let me, if I had to, let me just go through that. I think each of the figures has a reference. I referenced the New Mexico Water Resources Research Institute study on per figure 1. I referenced.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hightower, where,
Yes.
what page is that study referenced on?
Okay, figure 1 is on page 9. Figure 2.
Mr. Hightower, just hold on, please.
Okay.
On page 9, where is there specific reference to a peer review article? This is page 9 of your Exhibit 1, correct?
Correct. Figure 1, the source is the New Mexico Water Resources Research Institute 2020, their technical report on produced water availability in New Mexico.
Oh, I see on page 13.
It says page 9 for me, but I think what happens is since I had a testimony, they probably add another 4 pages or something to that. So I'm looking at only my exhibit. So let's add 4 pages to every page that I mentioned here, and I think that might work.
Got it.
Okay, so there's a reference there. A reference on figure 2, which is the following page, which is, this came directly out of the New Mexico Oil and Oil Conservation Division. Their data off of their website.
Right.
And
That
there's-
is a website reference, not a peer reviewed article.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just saying what kind of references that I used in this.
Yeah, I'm specifically asking for peer reviewed journal articles.
Then I do the Jane Journal of Hazardous Materials on figure 3.
Right, the one we identified, that I just
Okay.
identified,
Then
correct?
there's Jang again on table 1.
Same data source, correct?
Same data source. Figure 4 is a paper from Department of Energy, but it's not necessarily peer reviewed. Okay, let me go to these other things. So those were the references that I used. That one is the only peer review. Those others were reports or documents from other organizations. Okay. Is that all right? Or you guys can still hear me?
We lost the room there for a moment, but we are back on. Ms. Fox, I have forgotten what your question was now.
Madam Hearing Officer, Mr. Hightower and I were just confirming that the Zhang article that he referred to was the same journal article that I initially asked him about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Did you hear me that I said the other references were reports or data from other agencies, but that is the only peer-reviewed paper that I referenced. So hopefully that answers your question, Ms. Fox.
Thank you. Mr. Hightower, you were in the room for Dr. Lewis's testimony on Wednesday, correct?
I was, yes, ma'am.
Did you hear his analysis of the Zhang article that we've been referring to?
Yes, I did.
Do you agree with his analysis?
Not really.
Where's your area of disagreement?
Well, he said a lot of things. I believe that, when you look at these analyses from these different wells, that you get some variability, but I don't think the variability is as large as maybe he was leading us to think that there was. And that's, I think, the biggest discussion point that I have is how many constituents do we really have to be looking at 1,200 to start off with, or are we looking at a much smaller number? So that's the differences that I have.
Dr.
Between Dr. Lewis's discussions.
Dr. Lewis stated, quote, the supplemental materials in the Zhang et al. 2022 study describe results from an analysis of 46 produced water samples from 5 locations and 10 Pecos River samples from one location. Is that accurate?
No, it's not. I think that they collected Pecos River samples from 5 locations, and the water was collected from other locations for the Permian Basin.
He says we can check that. A total of 309 analytes were analyzed, or in these samples, 91 of which were detected in the produced water samples and 67 of which were detected in the Pecos River samples. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Notably, there was not consistent overlap between the compounds identified in the produced raw water and the river. For example, the authors noted that only 6 organic compounds were detected in the Pecos River water, whereas 28 organic compounds were detected in the produced water samples. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's correct that the authors of that article found, quote, thus, comprehensive chemical characterization and risk assessment of produced water is necessary for potential treatment and beneficial use outside the oil and gas field in the Permian Basin, correct?
Correct.
In your testimony on page 3, you state that the rule could be amended to, quote, simply require that all non-traditional waters, including produced water, be treated to meet the identified numerical and associated narrative discharge standards noted at NMAC 20.6.4.900 for the application required, end quote, along with a requirement for wet testing, correct?
Correct.
The standards at 20.6.4900 are surface water quality standards, correct?
Yes, they are.
You didn't propose including a requirement for meeting groundwater quality standards at 20.6.2 NMAC, correct?
I did not.
And you know that New Mexico has both surface and groundwater quality standards, correct?
I do.
And you agree that at a minimum, both groundwater and surface water standards should be met, correct?
I do agree.
You testified
So what-
Wednesday about the Danforth et al. Article that's been much discussed during this proceeding, which is NMED Exhibit 133.
I did discuss that. Yes.
That is a 2020 article entitled An Integrative Method for Identification and Prioritization of Constituents of Concern in Produced Water from Onshore Oil and Gas Extraction, correct?
Yes.
And you testified that the Danforth et al. Article's identification of approximately 1,200 chemicals included chemicals that were found only once in the literature, correct?
Correct.
On page 3 of that article, the authors state, chemicals that were considered in the toxicity prioritization analysis were restricted to the constituents that, 1, had been detected in produced water more than once, 2, had reported concentration data, and 3, were known to have some toxicity data available. Specifically, those chemicals were included in the toxicity value database. What is the toxicity prioritization analysis referred to?
I don't know.
Madam Hearing Examiner, if she's going to ask about Exhibit 133, maybe we can ask if he has it in front of us, him. Otherwise, I'm
I
sure
do
we can
not.
all read it.
Are there
That's
other questions, Ms. Fox?
There are a couple, but if there are a number, and could Ms. Jones put up NMED Exhibit 133? Could you put up an NMED Exhibit 133? Be careful what you ask for, Mr. Wexler.
We're not concerned about that study at all.
And actually, we do need a short break. So perhaps Ms. Jones could work on that. We could take a break and Mr. Hightower can review it to the extent possible while we break.
Thank you.
All right, 10 minutes. Sorry, Mr. Hightower. It might be
Yes,
easier
yes,
for
ma'am.
you. It might be easier for you to see it if you go to the Docketed Matters website for WQCC and find NMED Exhibit 133. You might be able to read it more easily.
Yeah, what I'm worried about is if I lose this connection, then we're all in a mess.
Okay.
I'd rather just, I've read the paper multiple times. I'd rather
Okay.
just answer the question and not lose the connection.
Oh,
Because, okay,
yeah. Okay. Never mind. I understand. I'll ask her to read the pertinent parts. Okay.
Okay, that she could. Huh?
Well, I remember this.
I wouldn't know which, that wouldn't help me in.
You know, the one
Remember which one you're talking about.
out of 10 Harris drainage.
Harris drainage, that would probably be.
You know, no, Harris outside.
That's where the hearing.
No, it's that. Harris.
I'm not talking about hearing.
No. Yeah, I had
Lines.
and it's for that really old site. He had the authority to oversee a kind of crazy there, and it was that chemical facility.
Was this first?
Well, I don't, no, definitely not mine. It was a chemical site. It was going. Central Highway 14 into Harris. Arroyo.
You sure that was not? This is not something.
Mr. Gall.
So do I?
I think that could apply.
I did make a lot of attempts.
Other attorneys.
I wrote him first round.
And sort of critiquing other.
Got my kitchen. Yeah. I got to work on that process of putting together a application, putting a cover letter on top of it, and saying, this is your discharge. And started writing. Molly.
Actually starts last week. My nuclear fan.
So I'm not even because I'm that big my sister. And next year was like.
I don't already know.
My sister's wedding.
For that reason.
At this moment, I was at the figure something else.
I don't know.
I really hope we were gonna get. But it wasn't. I did not.
There, except for
Certain high tower.
maybe 2.5, 3 years.
So.
I know I work with your some.
You know, I really.
Involved in one of the uranium.
Broke it in.
Mary had a
I agree. And your presentation is about. No. How long we suppose?
And the direct.
Yeah.
But still, it's interrupting years ago, the continuity of.
So if you give your report now and your cross months from now, that's still not a great thing.
Oh, that's right, I remember.
I'm trying to figure out that way to maximize. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very bad.
I heard a lot of bit about that.
And we throw from what I remember.
Right.
Yeah. Second.
Yeah.
Rewriting stuff.
They're bad, right?
That's like, there's a lot of information. Might read.
Oh, yeah.
Good God.
Yeah.
I remember spending a lot of time. I was really bored. It was. Was that? Oh, he did great. No, for him, it was. Always bored. It was a great day. It was terrible. And in that period,
That makes sense.
initially when I got rates in the evening, course was asking me questions.
And I realized, you know, I really.
Signal.
Okay, let's come back from the break, please. All right.
You guys
Ms.
still hear me?
Jones has the exhibit on the screen. Ms. Fox?
Thank you, Ms. Jones, for putting that up. I appreciate that. And Mr. Hightower emailed you the exhibit too, but we have it up in front of the screen. Going, Ms. Jones, to page 3.
Can you guys hear me still?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
And Mr. Hightower, looking under the section entitled 2.3 Collection and Analysis of Toxicity Data,
Mm-hmm.
it states chemicals that were considered in the toxicity prioritization analyses were restricted to constituents that 1, had been detected and produced water more than once, 2, had reported concentration data, and 3, were known to have some toxicity data available, specifically those chemicals that were included in the toxicity value database. And my question to you, what is the toxicity prioritization analyses referred to in the Danforth article?
I do not know.
Do you know what the toxicity value database is referred to in the article?
Yes, there is a database that's put together by, I understand, EPA. It's a database that we use also to look at toxicity information for different compounds. I don't do that research. I'm somewhat familiar with it, but I don't do that research. That's done through the researchers at MSU. So I'm aware of it, but I've never used those databases. But we have talked about it in the past.
So, but you would agree that at least for purposes of the toxicity prioritization analyses referred to in the Danforth article, the constituent had to have been detected more than once, correct?
Correct.
And you could look at page 4 of the article, Ms. Jones. And this is at toward the end of the first column on the left under section 3, results. And at the very end of that paragraph, the last 2 sentences state, from the comprehensive literature search, a total of 1,198 unique chemicals were identified as having been detected in produced water. Of these, 296 chemicals satisfied the additional criteria of being detected more than once and having associated concentration data. 122 chemicals had the further criteria of having at least 2 types of toxicity data. You don't dispute the representation in what I just read, do you, Mr. Hightower?
No, I do not.
Mr. Hightower, you might recall on Wednesday, Commissioner Dominguez asked you whether there were constituents the consortium had identified that do not have New Mexico water quality standards. Do you remember him asking you about that?
I don't remember that exact question. I'll have to think about it, but I remember he asked me a question.
Do you remember telling him that there were constituents among the ones that had been identified that do not have New Mexico water quality standards?
I think what I mentioned was that we were finding, we found some constituents in the produced water, treated produced waters that probably could be attributed to either some carryover of the process or could be, very small concentrations that we maybe had not expected to find. So that's what I think my testimony was. I don't remember it exactly, but anyway, that's what I think I said.
Among the constituents in produced water that you have identified, you being you or I guess members affiliated with the consortium have identified as being in produced water in the Permian, are there constituents for which there are no New Mexico ground or surface water quality standards?
I can't tell you exactly. I haven't compared them 1 to 1. That's not what I have been focused on.
So the answer is you don't know.
I don't know, which is one of the reasons that I suggested if we did things, a wet test would be appropriate to look for any unknowns that we don't know.
Mr. Hightower, you have not proposed to the commission water quality standards for potential contaminants in produced water for which there are no New Mexico surface or groundwater standards, have you?
No, I have not.
And the consortium has not made any such proposal, has it?
No, they have not.
In your written and oral testimony, you talk about a survey of county fairs and the like that you undertook, correct?
That is correct.
You did not attach a copy of the survey or the results, correct? To your NOI?
To the
Objection
NOI,
to that.
I didn't.
I think it's part of his NOI. The figure contains the results of the survey.
I'm
In
talking
my
about the
exhibit-
original results, not a representation of the results.
I think he said earlier that the original data was in appendices, right, to the reports. Mr. Hightower, can you clear this up for us?
So I think what I was alluding to real quickly was in my exhibit 1. On the last page of Exhibit 1 is a summary of the results from that survey of the some 650 or so 700 people that we discussed, that we actually filled out the survey, and we have results from.
I
So
understand that.
rather than
And my
give-
question is whether you
Yeah.
attach the actual survey and the actual survey result data. That's all I'm asking.
No, I did not. I did attach the summary. That's all I attached. Yes.
Now, the
Correct.
question you highlight from that survey in your testimony is that you claim, quote, shows that 70% of those polled supported the treatment and reuse of produced water if shown to be, end quote, if shown to be safe, end quote. Is that correct?
No, I don't think I said 70. I thought I said 60 to 70% because the numbers show between 61 and 65%. So that's what I think I said was 60 or to 70% approved or showed that they would be interested in using treated produced water, and that depends upon the application and just the application. And I have the applications there.
Mr. Hightower, reading from your NOI on page 3, you talk
Mhm.
about the survey, and you
Yes.
said that it, quote, shows that 70% of those polled supported the treatment and reuse of produced water if shown to be safe.
Okay, so the way that figure comes up is
So,
if,
Mr. Hightower, my
Okay.
question
Yes,
is that what is in your notice of intent? Mr. Hightower, I am really trying to, I don't want to
yes,
spend
okay. The answer,
inordinate
yeah, the
amount of
answer is
time, and I'm
yes.
really, in
Okay.
respect to the commission, because I know these, days are getting long, so
Sure.
you just
So the
answered the
point
question.
is, the answer is yes, because 25% said they'll have to have more information. 5% said no. That means that 70% overall said yes.
So now that question assumes that produced water has been, quote, shown to be safe, end quote, correct?
Correct.
So does it really come as any surprise to you that people would say that they support the use of water that has been, quote, shown to be safe?
Objection relevance. I'm not sure whether or not Mr. Hightower is surprised or not has any relevance here or tendency to.
I can
make-
rephrase.
Right. Go ahead, Mr. Hightower. What is your response?
No, it's not surprising to me. I think that if you talk to people around the state, as we have, where there's water stress, they're all looking for alternative water supplies. Non-traditional resources they understand is something that the state has. So I don't think that 70% saying yes is unusual at all.
But the question assumes the water is shown to be safe, correct?
Absolutely correct.
Mr. Wexler asked you about NMOGA Exhibit 35, which is a 2-page document from the consortium entitled Fit for Purpose Use of Produced Water. Do you remember that line
Yes.
of questioning?
Yes, that was only about like 8 hours ago, so I'm very familiar with that.
On page 1 of that document, it says, quote, what are some of the potential uses of treated produced water? The quality of produced water varies greatly across the different oil and gas basins in New Mexico. Therefore, the potential treatment quality and the associated potential application could vary significantly. Several potential uses exist or are being considered by the consortium, including, and then there's a list of potential uses.
Sure.
From your discussion with Mr. Wexler of the exhibit, it sounds as if as research is underway, for example, to study plant and soil bioaccumulation and toxicity testing, correct?
Correct.
But it also sounded from your discussion that the research is ongoing and not concluded, correct?
Correct.
And that document is dated September 2021, correct?
I don't know the date on that, but the answer is that it's still under testing. It's hasn't been approved yet at all.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Mr. Knight, do you have questions of Mr. Hightower?
And for the administrator, I'm going to be referring to NMED Exhibit 55 here in a few minutes it's from our original NOI. Good afternoon, Mr. Hightower.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well for 5 p.m. on a Friday. Let's see. As you know, I'm Andrew Knight with the New Mexico Environment Department. And I just have a few questions for you regarding your testimony. Let's see. So would you agree with me that the consortium was created specifically as a New Mexico State University vehicle to investigate and provide the scientific evidence for the New Mexico Environment Department to develop water reuse rules? Is that correct?
Correct.
And as you stated several times by now, you are appearing on your own behalf, and you were not authorized by New Mexico State University to speak on behalf of the consortium in this matter. Is that also correct?
That is correct.
And in fact, after reviewing your testimony, the relevant folks at New Mexico State University have specifically directed you not to testify on behalf of the consortium. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And when you testified earlier today regarding who your primary contact at NMED was, I believe you used some words that could be misconstrued as implying that NMED oversees or directs the activities of the consortium, but that isn't the case, is it?
I would say that NMED provides input as we move forward on projects and activities, but they do not manage on a day-to-day basis the consortium, but they are a major element that we talk to as we identify research programs and research activities and as we try to do treatment studies, we interact very closely with NMED, but I would say you're right that on a day-to-day operational basis, they are not managing the consortium.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Is that
Yeah.
okay, or would you like that in more detail?
No, that's fine. Although there are memorandums of understanding between NMED and NMSU regarding the consortium, NMED does not direct the personnel or activities of the consortium in any way, correct?
I would say that is correct, yes. They might nudge us in one direction or another, but they do not control that, no.
Okay, and I would like to have the administrator bring up NMED Exhibit 55, if that's possible. Okay. Okay, that's all right. If we need to pause, we can, but I think I can at least proceed and until there is until.
So I can trust what you're going to say. So, I mean,
Okay.
just go ahead and ask the question, and I don't think that you're going to.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
Inappropriate.
familiar with the most recent memorandum of understanding that was signed, I believe, on November 10th, 2022, between NMSU and NMED regarding the consortium.
I'm familiar with the document. Yes, I've read it. I've only read it once. I've scanned through it, but yes,
Sure.
I know the document. Yes.
And again, if you recall this, it's fine. But if we need to wait until we can bring the document up, we can do that as well. But if you recall, do you recall that there's a requirement under the most recent memorandum of understanding that the consortium provide NMED with annual program plans and quarterly budget briefings? Those are actually two different requirements.
I'm not familiar with the quarterly budget briefings, but I think we have tried to provide annual plans for NMED every year and projections. I'm not familiar with the budget aspect. I don't really remember that, but go ahead.
Okay. And I guess I'm not going to ask if it would surprise you, but I'm just going to ask,
Go ahead, ask.
are you aware that NMED has not received annual program plans from the consortium for either 2022 or 2023 pursuant to Section 2C3E of that memorandum of understanding?
No, I did not know that
Okay.
because I have prepared them, and I will have to talk to see how that. I know our point of contact with NMED is Patricia Sullivan, and I'll have to see why that has not occurred.
Okay, thank you. And again, are you also aware that NMED has not received quarterly budget briefings pursuant to paragraph 2C13 of that same memorandum of understanding?
No, I do not. I don't handle the budget. It's an NMSU budget. It's through their budget office, and that's handled by Patricia Sullivan.
Okay.
Dr. Patricia Sullivan.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
Mr. Hightower, when you discuss the term fit for purpose in your testimony, is this term, in your understanding, is this term specific to produced water?
No, I don't think it's specific to produced water. The term that I'm using is from the US EPA's Water Reuse Action Plan that came out in 2020. Since we were asked to kind of coordinate with them, I try to use their terminology and their definitions. And so since it's for their water reuse, it's for all waters to be reused. So all industrial wastewaters, municipal wastewater, agricultural wastewater, all wastewaters is the term that I use from EPA, and it's for, like I said, it's for all wastewaters.
Does the
Does that
term,
answer your question? Is that
yes, thanks.
okay?
Does the term fit for purpose, let's say for agriculture, consider protection of ground or surface waters, or is it limited to just determining impacts to the purpose?
I really don't know how EPA defines that, but my expectation is from a practical perspective that fit for purpose treatment reuse for agriculture, if it's rangeland where you're putting in small amounts of water versus if it's for ag applications where you're putting on significantly more volumes of water, would have to take that into consideration, as well as depth to water table, the chances for contamination of groundwater and contamination of surface water. So I think that's all as part of their regulations and the way that they look at that. It would be very sensible to look at it that way.
So, the studies, I guess, referring to the projects, I think, the studies that you were testifying about that look at fit for purpose applications.
Correct.
Do you know whether those evaluate, say, groundwater impacts?
No, the studies that we're doing are, other than one study, the studies that we're doing are treatment studies to see if the technologies can treat a water to a quality that might apply for an application, for a different application. So there's no studies that have been done specifically to see if it's going to be good enough for irrigation water or surface water discharge or groundwater aquifer storage and recovery. What we're trying to do right now is identify how clean we can get the water. Can we get it clean enough that if it goes into the environment, it will be clean enough that it doesn't hurt people or the environment or the ecology? But we don't have any specific purposes in mind other than one study that wanted to look at their water for applications to irrigation, or I'll call it industrial horticulture that could be used in greenhouses. That's the only one that was specifically addressed as a specific application.
Okay. And actually, I think we don't need the exhibit up at this point. I think we're.
They spent all that time getting that exhibit up.
I know.
We're not going to use it. Okay. I figured you could ask me the question without me having to look at it. I can answer it. Okay.
So referring to those same studies, do you know whether they also evaluate things like designated uses of receiving streams?
No, they have not done that yet. Don't want. No.
So, Mr. Hightower, what is your experience with water quality standards, and are you familiar with designated uses in the state water quality standards that are codified at 20.6.4 or in the groundwater standards in 20.6.2?
The only, my experience with them I've never gotten a permit. I've never applied for a permit, is to read the quality standards and the numerical standards, as they're called, I guess, and the narrative standards for different potential applications. So I'm not recommending to anyone whether their water is good enough or not good enough. I'm just suggesting that we can use some of the standards that exist as targets for testing. You need to be in this quality range to even be considered. So that helps us identify what kind of treatment technologies we choose and post-treatment technologies that we're going to look at. What I'm using the standards for is not to try to get a permit, but to try and make sure that the technologies we can identify approaches to get to some of the permit requirements that they may want to use down the road. So I'm using the standards as I see them as kind of guideposts, is that we have to be in this area to be able to reuse this water. Let's test your water to make sure that we're getting to the right ballpark, and don't come to us with a technology that doesn't have a polishing step because it's cheaper. In reality, it can't be permitted because it's got too many other constituents in it. So I'm using the standards as guideposts rather than trying to suggest to people how to do that. That's why we are coordinating with NMED. They're the guys that are the experts in that, not me.
Understood. So these studies don't evaluate protection of all the standards that I just mentioned. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're not focused on that as for currently for
Okay.
our treatment processes.
And how have these studies addressed, if at all, how have these studies addressed the general criteria in surface water quality standards? Particularly, I'm referring to the standards for toxic pollutants that are codified in 20.6.4.13F NMAC. And that was, for reference, that was submitted as NMED Exhibit 28.
I apologize for
But-
interrupting. I lost the thread. When you say these studies, which studies are we talking about?
Mr. Hightower, could you refresh our recollection as to which studies that you were just testifying about?
Sure. So my assumption is that I'm supposed to be testifying on some of the treatment studies that we're currently conducting and are underway or in planning. Some of those studies are pre-treatment studies where we're just trying to improve the quality of the raw water so that we can treat it better. Some of those studies are around treatment technology efficacy, what the costs and the performance are, and what levels of constituents we can get down to in the treated water that would allow us to then identify, does it look like we're going to need additional post-treatment or polishing? So those are the treatment studies I think we're talking about. And
Okay.
Yes. Does that answer the other question, Mr. Jeff?
I believe it does.
Okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
And
So now I've lost my train of thought on your question. I'm sorry.
sure. No, the last question I had on these was, or maybe second to last, these studies, did these studies address the general criteria in surface water quality standards? And I'm particularly referring to the toxic pollutant surface water standards in 20.6.4.
So no, what we're looking for does treated produced water have any of those constituents in it? Those are the things that we're looking at. And if they do, how do we take those out? So we're not trying to say that we're not trying to verify and qualify a technology. That's not our role. Our role is to assess the technology and what it can do. It's once we say that this looks like it's reasonable, I think that's where those companies would go to NMED and work out a plan on how to use that water and what the NMED thinks they need to be testing for, how often they need to test, etc. So we're trying to get, as I mentioned, using the existing criteria as guidelines in where we have to be in this treatment space to have a chance to go and talk to NMED and make sure that your technology is in the right ballpark for them to want to evaluate. Because we just don't want to be sending technologies to NMED that are going to fail. It's just a waste of your time and it's a waste of everybody else's time. We want to make sure that those technologies are good enough to even have a chance to go to get approval from NMED. That's how we're using those.
And I think we've established that the consortium has at this point not provided NMED with the data that would be necessary for us to develop standards for the discharge of produced water. Would you agree?
I would agree.
And so, so I guess I have to ask the next question. How, in your mind, how would NMED have had the data necessary to develop standards for this rulemaking?
I'm going to object. His calls for speculation. I don't know how he can
Okay,
understand what is in NMED's mind.
that's fine. It was probably a rhetorical.
But I could answer it if you want me to.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I think that people haven't believe that I'm anti-NMED. I am not. I don't think that there are standards in place as such to do projects now. It takes us maybe a year or two to get the data for them to get it. They have asked us specifically for peer-reviewed data. We're providing peer-reviewed information. It takes about 2 years to do that. So what I'm suggesting is that to leave that open, that we're getting data, we're getting more data in the next 6 months, that we're close enough that to leave this option open, that treated produced water could have a closer opportunity to being having standards identified for it in the next 1.5 to 2 years than waiting for a regulatory environment 4 years or 5 years down the road. So all I'm asking is, I think we've got a process in place that allows us to move technologies through to collect the data that NMED needs, but it's not 5 years from now, it's more like 18 months from now. And I would hate to have that door closed currently and then push us back 5 years. I think we're close. I agree. I don't say we have enough information for standards today, but I think when we get 3 or 4 more sets of data, 6 sets of data, we can start looking at those more closely with NMED. That's just my point of view.
Okay.
Okay.
You heard Ms. Fulham's testimony this morning. First thing
Or for the
this
last
morning.
week, poor thing.
Yeah, that her testimony specifically that the department has been clear in all communications since 2019 that this first reuse rulemaking would be a prohibitive rule, meaning that it would not allow any discharges. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes, I do. And
Okay.
I agree that maybe it was my fault, but no discharges. I agree. There's
Okay.
no discharges currently. I mean, agreed.
Okay.
Okay, but the difference to me is, and I may be going too far, is whether that was no discharges of raw produced water, and I agree with that. But to say that there's no discharges of treated produced water in the future, to me, was too far. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Understood. You said in your testimony, you said that you were, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, you said you were in favor of the petitioned version of the rule and that you were not in favor of the version currently being proposed. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay. And yet the two versions of the rule are not that different. Isn't that true?
Object to form.
I don't think
I'm
so.
sorry,
I don't.
hold on, Mr. Hightower, hold on.
Okay.
I didn't hear you, Mr. Wexler.
Yeah, my objection is that the question is vague. I mean, the two versions of the exhibit are not that form. If he wants to point out a specific provision or what we're talking about.
Okay, I think Mr. Hightower had already begun answering the question, so I think he understands it. Go ahead, Mr.
Well,
Hightower.
let's ask him if he understands it, maybe.
I think I understand it.
All right, please go ahead.
I don't think the two versions are close at all. I think they're light years away from each other. And what I mean is, if I go in and say that the use of raw produced water is strictly prohibited, as I've said multiple times, I agree with that. I don't have a problem with that. The number of produced waters that would negatively impact is just minor. But it's going to be much safer if we treat every produced water, at least somewhat. But to say to change at the last, and that's based upon all of the public input. And that was the proposal in December based upon a lot of public input. And I thought this is a very balanced approach, that you can prohibit the raw produced water. You leave the option for treatment of produced water open. You leave the opportunity to do testing to get the data to allow you to make a decision on that. But there were no standards identified because I don't think we have enough standards within the state of New Mexico yet, or enough testing to make those standards. But it allows us in the future, when we collect enough data, and if we give you enough data, you can make standards for fit for purpose use. And the law, reading that way, is a law that's good for today, and it forces us to get more and more information and provides you with opportunities to improve that law down the road. The way that it was revised without any public input was it prohibits raw produced water, it prohibits any treated produced water, and now it doesn't even have a way for you to even collect data and set standards. So to me, that is totally different from the original that was submitted back in December.
Well, let's talk about that. See if we can wrap this up. So are you familiar with, obviously, the version of the rule that was filed with the petition in December of 2023, right?
Yes,
You're familiar
that's the
with
one that I read and was very impressed with and congratulated NMED people on. Yes.
All right.
I'm very familiar with that.
Thank you. That version of the rule did not contain any permitting procedures, does it?
No, it does not.
It doesn't contain any effluent standards, does it?
No, it does not.
So there's no way the department could issue a permit under that rule for any discharge of any type. Do you agree?
Actually, that's beyond his expertise.
No, it follows on the line of explanation he just gave.
No, he's repeatedly said that he doesn't do the permitting side of thing. And the question is,
Oh my God.
it doesn't allow you to do permitting.
Okay, so Mr. Hightower, to the extent that you can answer the question, and again, I think Mr. Knight is just trying to follow up on his question about the two differences between the two rules. But if he has reached the end of your understanding of the permitting landscape, you can just say that. Go ahead.
Well, by having the standards for discharge not in that section, I was under the understanding that as that original document, the December version, is that Immediately there would not be any discharge. And
Okay.
that at some point in time down the road, when there was enough information, you would go back to the Water Quality Control Commission and with our help and data that we're collecting for NMED, you could set some standards. So
And-
immediately, if that thing was passed, I would see that there would be no opportunity for discharge as such for full applications, but that you did leave it open for demonstrations for testing and to collect additional information so that you can make those decisions. That's my understanding, and hopefully that's what that meant. Okay.
Okay, let's wrap it up here. You said that you liked the NOI process in the proposed rule. Is that right?
I do.
Okay, and do you believe that the NOI process in the proposed rule will allow demonstration and pilot projects to go forward?
I do.
And do you believe that is important?
I do.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Mr. Hightower, you indicated you wanted to speak on your own behalf in order to put some context or response around the email string that Ms. Nanasi shared with you.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe it was from Adrian Sandoval.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead and say whatever you'd like to say about that.
Well, I think she implied that I had been admonished, and I think that was the word she used, by both OCD and NMED. And she gave two examples, one a memo from NMED and one a memo from OCD. In my opinion, since we were already and agreed to not put any produced water on the ground, that we would treat it, measure the treated water quality, recombine it with the produced water, and then dispose of it in a saltwater disposal well per current regulations. We decided that in January of 2020, and that's what we have followed from the beginning of the consortium, that there was no admonishment from John Roderick in July when he reiterated that that's what he was looking for. And if you even look in that memo, it says that this is going to supersede two other memos that we had from NMED that said the same thing. So it seems like to me that that memo from John Roderick was to remind us that we're not putting any produced water on the ground on any of our tests, that it all has to be disposed of, which, as I think Mr. Herman testified, that we have not put any produced water on the ground anywhere on any of our projects that we've done. So I don't see that as an admonishment. And then the letter or the email that I got from Adrian Sandoval was talking about Hillcorp. Hillcorp has not done any projects with us because Hillcorp hasn't filled out all the paperwork correctly yet. And we've been working with them for 3 years. So we have not gone around anybody's back, that we have made sure that Hillcorp has been working with the BLM and OCD and NMED to try to get a permit. And until all of those permits are in place, we're not going to be doing any testing. So it was not admonishing me. I think she was a little upset at Hillcorp that they were pushing back. And we had an agreement with OCD, NMED, and that whatever location they were going to do testing at, you had to get a permit from where you're going to do the testing. We have not modified that at all. So far, everybody that has done testing in New Mexico with us has gotten all the permits in place to do that testing. So it's not an admonishment of me. I think it's an admonishment of some of the people that are trying to do work with us, but we're sticking to the rules that we've assessed and developed through the consortium to make sure that any federal agency or state agency that we interact with, that they have a chance to provide approval of any project that we do. So I don't see that as admonishment of me. at all. I see those as essentially saying, you don't like you're doing your job. A lot of people are upset about it, but they don't say keep doing the right thing. They got to come down hard, but I don't think they're coming down hard on me.
Okay,
My-
well,
my
thank you
opinion.
very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. Any reason not to excuse Mr. Hightower? Chair Thompson, one question.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. I have one question. You said just a few minutes ago that the PWRC, the consortium, has not provided standards for produced water reuse. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is there
That's not-
any member of the consortium, the academics, the researchers, or collaborators that are human or environmental toxicologists or human or environmental epidemiologists?
Do we have those on the consortium?
Yes.
That's your question?
Yes.
Yes, we do. We have, industry has provided toxicologists, and we had toxicologists from New Mexico State also on the panel. And EPA has provided us members of our working group on risk and toxicology. We work with them on the consortium also. So we have probably 7 or 8 toxicologists, environmental epidemiologists involved in that working group.
And so you expect that within the next 18 months, they will provide numeric standards for treated produced water?
No, I didn't say that. I said that what we're using that group is to help us identify the polishing steps to make sure that as we evaluate these produced waters, we can identify which ones may or may not be toxic and what kinds of chemicals that we're finding and at what concentrations, such that we can be safe. One of the things that we're trying to do is move toward the PNEC, which is the predicted no effect concentration. And if we can collect enough information that says what the PNECs are, we can begin to help, I think, NMED set those standards. But we're not trying to set standards. We're trying to provide information so that NMED can develop those standards themselves. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. I
All right.
misunderstood.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to excuse Mr. Hightower. Thank you very much, Mr. Hightower.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to adjourn for the day. We will reconvene, hopefully in this room, at 9 a.m. on July 1st. And everyone will be notified if the location is different. Thank you all very much. Safe drive.